I would ask Kerry, when he gets a VA case, what is he looking for? When he gets a new client, what is he looking for so that you can profit through his way of thinking through a case and what you should be doing with your own?
What I do depends on the case I'm looking at. Is it a service connection case, an increased rating case, a DIC case for a widow, an SMC case? But there are some things I always do. I'm always going to look at the whole file. I might not do that initially. For example, a lot of what we get for new cases are somebody trying to get service connection for something. So in that, I want to know some 800,000 foot stuff. Is the decision that the veteran brought us the only decision of record? Are there multiple decisions of record? When did the veteran serve? How long did he serve? Where did he serve? If I know those things before I ever start reviewing the file, then I know what to pay more attention to when I go through the file. I'm going to go through it all, but certain things are going to stand out as more important than other things. If the case that was brought to us is the only rating decision that's ever been made in the case, then I don't have to worry about there being any prior mistakes in prior rating decisions, because there are no prior rating decisions. Then I can cut a lot of that out and just go, all right, what did the veteran file for? Why did they deny him or her? And then I can go start with the service medical records, the service records, look at VA's opinions, and look at the end result rating decision. Now, there's obviously going to be sometimes treatment records in there, that type of thing. But a lot of times those treatment records are just going to kind of confirm what the veteran's already claiming. That might not always be the linchpin in the case unless those treatment records began right after the service. So is what the veteran bringing us, is it a chronic disease? Meaning there's a list of chronic diseases in VA's regulations that if diagnosed within a year is automatically grantable. So am I dealing with one of those? Am I dealing with a case that's 30 years after service or 3 years after service? All of those are roadmaps to me. And once I know the answer to all those things, when I start going through that file, if there are mistakes in it, I'm going to find them. If, however, the case that was brought to us is one of 20 different rating decisions the vet's filed for in the last 20 years, that's a different kind of review for me, because every one of those rating decisions could have a mistake in it. I'm going to take those same 1,000-foot level road signs and apply it to all of those prior decisions, because a lot of times the vet will bring us one case, but I'll see a case that was denied 10, 20 years ago that I think is a clear and unmistakable error. And maybe the case that was brought to us might be worth 10 or 20 or 30%, but this error back here might be worth 300 grand in back pay. So I'm going to go after that. All of that depends on obviously the facts of each case. What did VA do? That is so important, because usually what they did most of the time is where they went wrong. The VA exams are huge road signs into tons of mistakes that can happen. They got an opinion, and the opinion said, take your pick, a list of 100 different things that could be a legally insufficient medical opinion. And I know pretty quickly that that's exactly why the case was denied, and that's what I have to attack. If there are no other things to do in the record, like file for previous mistakes or file for other conditions. I know Carol looks at this a lot. Am I dealing with a Vietnam veteran or an Iraq or Afghanistan veteran, or otherwise a veteran exposed to some toxins where he may be filing for one condition, but because of those exposures, he's got 3 other things that could get service connected. So I'm going to file for those 3 other things and get him all the benefits that I can get him. If it's a Vietnam veteran and there are 20 different claims in the record, that changes what I'm looking for, because now there could be other things at play, like Nehmer implication. Nehmer is a court case on strictly for Vietnam veterans who were exposed to herbicides, where in certain circumstances and certain fact patterns, if a vet was denied previously for something that's now presumptive, then they should have went back and re-adjudicated that original claim for that condition and potentially paid back pay for that time, going back to as far as September of 1986, if the claim was filed, after that point. and prior to the regulation. There's a lot of things that come into play. You have to make sure that Nehmer qualifies, but when it qualifies, it can ensure that that veteran gets retroactive benefits, sometimes for a long time. At the same time, say that same Vietnam veteran was a blue water veteran, okay,
Yes.
rather than an in-country veteran. Now, Nehmer still applies, but the blue water rules also apply. And they apply in a way that they cover an area that Nehmer misses. And most people don't look at that, meaning that if you filed for heart disease after the regulation came into play, you don't have a Nehmer claim, because under Nehmer, the claim has to have been prior to the regulation.
Prior to them making it presumptive.
Right, right. So let's say that veteran was a blue water veteran. Let's say they filed in 2011. Prior to the Blue Water Act, VA is going to deny that case. It's not a Nehmer claim because it was filed after the regulation. The Blue Water Act, however, covers the period after the regulation and says VA will pay retroactive benefits for that period. Nehmer doesn't pick that up, but the Blue Water Act does. So I'm going to look for that. Just in heart disease alone, you're talking 15 years,
Right.
almost, between the two. So there are all kinds of rules and regulations that come into play there. Am I dealing with an Iraq or Afghanistan veteran, a Gulf War veteran, anybody that's been overseas since 1990 forward? Are they a widow? Because the PACT Act says if they deny this widow, they may have to go back and pay that widow back to that original claim. So I'm looking for that. Once I sit down with a PDF of the claims file, my staff may have already gone through it and mapped it out. But sometimes I'll beat them to that punch. But when I do that, all I have is a PDF. I don't have a case map. But if I'm in that file prior to that happening, I just have 2,000 pages that I have to go through. I'll usually put sticky notes all the way through there because I've been doing this a long time. I can review that whole file instead of sticky notes. They know that's my case map. But when my staff goes to map it out, they can see my sticky notes and they know what I think is important just by looking at that. So I'll start with knowing what the issues are, and then I'll start from day one in the file. Was he treated for those conditions? If everything is an increased rating, it doesn't really matter what happened in service because we're dealing with an increased rating unless there are issues that were denied. So I'm going to start with the claims file, the service records. I'm going to look very much at what happened immediately after service because you've got a 1 year period there for any chronic disease. And then I'm going to go down the list chronologically and look at every rating decision, look at the reason everyone was denied. I've already got the background. So when I see those decisions as I go through that file, knowing those other things, if there are mistakes, I'm going to find them. And they may not all be the kind of mistakes that's going to get somebody back pay, but it may be the kind of mistakes that's still going to help me win the case that's in front of me.
That just shows you there's certain things we always do, but it is so hard because there is so much there. I mean, it's like you say, when you look at the case, you go, blue water. Okay, I know it goes with blue water. Let's get this out. There's just so much, and you've got to keep up with what's going on. I think you're right. A lot of people look at Nehmer, and when they look at blue water, they don't think of blue water. They just apply the same rules. So a lot of people are leaving a lot of money on the table because they're not going back. But we're trying to give you how we try to go through these cases. It's really hard because there's so many variables. Is it service connection? Is it increased rating? Is it all the way back? But it's not just continuing with the one claim that we have in front of us. It's looking at the whole case and seeing what more we can get there for the veteran.